I'm Mel Stewart, and this is a GMM Takeover of the Swim Sound Podcast. Joining me today, we have a very special guest. Today's episode is a big one. We're joined by Jaimie Fuller, chairman and co-founder of EO, the team behind the wearable that's rapidly changing how elite swimmers train. EO SwimBETTER. But we're not just talking tech. We're talking about values, because EO has just launched a bold campaign, the Integrity Wall, taking direct aim at the enhanced games and what they stand for. It's a strong stance in a sport that hasn't always known how to talk about clean performance. In this episode, Jaimie shares why he felt compelled to pick that fight, how data is unlocking breakthroughs that don't require breaking the rules, and how the likes of Pan Zhanle and Paige Madden and Kyle Chalmers are already proving what's possible. It's a fascinating look at the future of swimming told by someone who's not afraid to challenge the status quo. Let's dive in. It's rare that I talk to somebody who also has a beard in swimming.
Yeah, it's not an attractive look. It's more out of laziness than anything, mate.
It's that. It's a little bit of shame, but that's okay. The reason why we're partners and we've gotten close to each other, and I've enjoyed this relationship because you're an entrepreneur. You're a guy who's creative. You take chances, and this was a long time coming. Because we've been in conversations for a long time.
Well, we started, I think it must be over 3 years ago when I first contacted you. And we had a call and I showed you what we were doing, but you had some contractual limitations on what you could and what you couldn't do. So I was really pleased towards the end of last year when you contacted me and said, let's chat.
It's been good. I'm looking forward to seeing how we handle all of this on the run up. I'm very excited for you, but let's get right into it today. Why did you decide to go publicly after the enhanced games? This is it dominated the news cycle for a period of time. I think it caught some people by surprise. Many of us knew it was coming, but it felt a little bit like everybody was sort of slapped sideways.
So this weaves a couple of things in together, Mel. We've been working on the documentary since November last year. And it just so happened that I got the first cut of the doco on a Monday, 6 weeks ago. Checked it out, was sort of pleased with where we're heading, needed to do some tweaks. And then that night, I watched the Enhanced Games documentary that had just dropped. And this massive alarm bell went off with me because I've got a history before. Swimming isn't my life passion, if you like. It's part of our business, and we're about technology and about innovation. And it just so happens that the first product that we've produced in this life is in swimming. Previously, in my other business, I was doing a lot of work in advocacy around integrity in sport. And when you're talking about integrity in sport, a lot of it's to do with levels of governance in the sport. So a lot of work at the international federation level, but also a massive amount of work on anti-doping. And so I sort of drove anti-doping campaigns. So when I saw the Enhanced Games thing, massive alarm bells went off and I thought, hang on. This is a mega issue, and probably one of the things that drove me the most at that stage, because I knew all about it. I knew it was coming, but the fact that they chose to launch their whole event, they chose to launch their documentary, they chose to do everything around swimming specifically, and with us being in the swimming industry, and with us about to drop a documentary itself, I sort of felt compelled, if you like, to stand up and do something. And just as I did back in 2012, which was my first foray into this space, over the cycling issue with the Lance Armstrong affair, where I hung back and waited for others to come out and drive this. I did the same thing here, but I was surprised and pretty amazed at the lack of voices coming out to condemn the enhanced beyond World Aquatics. So we jumped in.
You're down under. Where are you? In what city?
We're in Sydney.
You're in Sydney. Okay.
Yeah.
You are, yes, you're very cosmopolitan. In the United States, I think it surprised people, and I think the reaction was behind the scenes. There were a lot of group texts, and people were very angry about it. We got pushback on it because we reported it as news, and it was we're like, we're going to report it as news, but we're not going to glorify this. But there was a lot of anger behind the scenes, but I was surprised that individually people weren't more vocal, and I was glad when I got your phone call. So I felt relieved. I was glad that somebody on the commercial side was stepping up.
And I might add, you asked me where I am. Until the Greek Bulgarian chap broke that record, this wasn't about him. This was about James Magnussen, right? And this is also about Brett Hawke. Now, I don't know James. I know Brett really well. I got enormous amount of respect for Brett. So this is not I'm not having a go at Brett. I'm not having a go at James. But I'd also add the founder of the whole concept is an Australian as well. So I sort of felt we got an Australian founder, we've got an Australian focused swimmer. It's the James Magnussen show. We've got an Australian coach. Again, we feel compelled to come out and talk about this because the implications are potentially disastrous. I mean, the message that it sends to kids, and already I've got coaches saying to me, they've got kids saying to them, oh, this sounds really interesting. I wonder how good I'd be if I was taking performance enhancing drugs.
I think that's the answer to my follow-up question, but what do you think the risks of promoting doping as entertainment?
So when I did the cycling thing I referred to 13 years ago, I spent a lot of time with Greg LeMond. You know, Greg won the Tour de France 3 times. He was the Lance Armstrong before Lance Armstrong. And Greg regaled me with countless stories of friends of his who had died, mostly in the middle of the night when their blood got so thick and sludgy with EPO or with the blood doping that their heart stopped. So the consequences of these things, and it's not just at the elite level, it's what happens when it gets into grassroots and what happens when the younger generation feel like they've got permission to do this stuff. The consequences are horrendous.
How does EO's mission stand in contrast to what the Enhanced Games is proposing?
So we're all about performing better through technology. It's all about data and tech and how you can utilize data and tech. And again, if we look at this through a swimming lens, swimming is very slow to the party, and it's understandable why, right? Every other sport is out there hammering away with data and with tech and bringing in other like sophisticated levels of mechanics well beyond video to improve performance. Now, if you speak to my principal scientist and my co-founder, Kenneth Graham, Kenneth will tell you that they were doing what we're doing now in rowing 20 years ago. But what you could do is you could put a 1 or a 2 kilo box in a boat because the technology required something of that size to be able to get the data and house that data. Well, now we've got to the point where the tech is miniaturized, where you can now put a small device on your hand and you can not only get that same data, but you can get way more. The fact that we're working in water further complicates matters, you know, as opposed to cycling, which is on a 2-dimensional plane, you know, where the feet just go round and round and you can get power data and technique data for that. With us, it's about 3 dimensions, it's in water, and it becomes quite complicated, but that's the joy of the process.
Talk to me about your documentary. Talk to me about swimming's Moneyball. I think the title is brilliant. I love that film. If you're not familiar with the film, it stars Brad Pitt, and it is about chasing after the players that are not expensive but are talent, and they're looked over, and you are mining talent where no one else can find it. So when I saw your title, I'm like, oh, that's pretty smart. What's it all about?
So the connection with Moneyball, frankly, is primarily about, as you say, mining talent, looking at data, finding that talent. But there's also a second dimension to it, which is, and that film is a cracking film, where Brad Pitt is basically told he doesn't know what he's doing, and the rest of the industry say, no, this is rubbish. And then I'm pretty sure they didn't win the competition, the World Series that year, but they were in the final. So it's about how it's not just about buy in that case with cash. For us, it's slightly different. It's about how do we expose and how do we tell an interesting story. And let's face it, when you're talking technology, when you're talking data, it's a very, very dry topic. So how do you not sex it up, but how do you make it more interesting and more entertaining so that people who are passionate about swimming can watch this and enjoy it, but also get a little bit of a better understanding and education as to what's going on.
So for anybody who's dropped in on the podcast, I have had a sneak peek of the documentary, and I was jealous because it was so well done. And the brilliance of it is you get into this story, and it feels like a tense thriller. You're being pushed. This energy is driving through, and so it's some expert filmmaking. Kudos to you, and you got huge stars. It features some of the biggest names in swimming. What's the story behind Pan, Paige Madden, and Kyle Chalmers?
Yeah, so we've been really fortunate to have been able to sit down with not just the best athletes, but also some of the best coaches. And when you explain what this is about, and there's no question, you always get some coaches who give you the response, "Oh, mate, I don't need that. I've been doing this for 47 years and I can see exactly what's going on underwater." Well, frankly, that's bollocks. Because when you've got a technology that's measuring these critical parameters every 50th of a second, there are things that are going on that you have absolutely no idea. So we're able to talk to guys like in the early days, guys like Ken Ono. Now Ken has got a massive reputation, not just in the United States, but globally, about his passion about bringing his mathematics and science specifically into swimming, and the great success that he's generated assisting Todd Sorbo. So once we can come to these people and explain this, and this is something that isn't done by anybody else. It's not like, oh, well, I might use company B or company C's system to do this. And they see that this is really as revolutionary as it is, then not only do they want to use it, but they really love to talk about it. They want to share it because with a lot of these people, there's an opportunity to say, I want to take what's helping me and I want to make it and blast it to the rest of the industry and see what we can do to get others in there too.
A lot of people on our platform took notice, and it felt like you went from 0 to 60 when everyone saw that Paige Madden dropped 19 seconds. That was eye-opening, and been proud medal after 5 Olympics. These aren't just outliers. What's happening here?
So they're not outliers. This is about athletes and coaches who buy into that concept, that the old adage of I'm swimming 11,000 yards a day. If you want to get better, swim 12 or 8, swim 9. It's not about constant growth. It's not about continually having to just thrash away. It's about applying a level of intellect and intelligence around the physics of swimming and the biomechanics of swimming. And I've got to tell you, having spent a lot of time in the United States, I did a tour earlier this year over 9 weeks. I drove from DC to LA, around the South, and I went and met at about 40 universities along the way. And I spoke to every coach, but I also had discussions and we did demonstrations and got data with athletes, and we went through it with the athletes. And I was stunned at so many athletes' lack of fundamental understanding about what they're doing. And I'll give you an example. There are a couple of key patterns that we see where athletes are losing performance in their swim. One of the biggies is to do with the amount of downward pressure or force at the front of the stroke in a freestyle compared to propulsive. The second one is to do with the fundamental concept of, I don't want my hand moving backwards. I want my hand grabbing the water, holding the water, and my body advancing. And we know to do that, that hand has to hold the water like that. Well, so many athletes, as that hand comes through, that hand is rotating. and it physically rotates and comes inwards. And we can show on the data, as you do that, we can show that your propulsion levels drops through the floor. And then as it comes in and it rotates and it pushes back, where pull becomes push, suddenly the propulsion level goes up. So you've got this significant valley of lost propulsion. And the reason you've got that is because not only is that hand rotating, so guess what? The moment your hand rotates, your hold on the water is slipping. But all that effort that you're applying, all that power that you're pushing through your shoulders and your muscles to advance the body, instead of that power being directed back towards your feet, guess where it's going? It's going that way. So these are what I would call just really fundamental basics. Now, you know Jonty Skinner, and I had a great lunch with Jonty. I know Jonty really well. He's been a fantastic resource and help for us over the last few years. I had this cracking discussion with Jonty about that concept and, you know, what is best? I mean, is it that hand should always face the back? And for what it's worth, Jonty's view was no, it needs to rotate a little bit. The question is how much, you know, so that hand can rotate slightly, just slightly. But the beauty about this data is we're able to go into and create a program that not only measures that data, but puts it together with all the other metrics, all the other things we measure, and then assesses it against time with respect to a time trial. And then we're able to mine that data, and we're able to come back and say to the elite sports community, guess what? These are the keys to how you can maximize your propulsion and the benefit from your propulsion.
You're getting ahead of me. You're covering a lot of material. I got to pick something out here. Jonty Skinner. A lot of people might not know who that is. They might not be old enough. And I'm pulling this from memory. Jonty's a South African swimmer. I think he was the first man to break 50 seconds in the 100-meter freestyle. Is that correct?
I know he held the world record in the 70s, but he never raced Olympics because, as you correctly say, he was South African and they were barred because of apartheid.
They were barred for a long time, and so I might have to double check myself if I'm wrong. Well, I'll fix it in the show notes and call myself out. But I think that he was the first man under 50 seconds. And he was well known in the United States, but he was also effectively sports science for United States Swimming in the 90s, back when USA Swimming invested in sports science, and we had a resident team, which is something we haven't had in decades. And his whole identity was this. It's like, this is what sports science is how you make swimmers faster. So let me pull this back to our conversation.
And just before you do, Mel, if I can add, his big thing was studying bubble patterns and bubble movements on video and inferring force and data calculations from the speed of the bubble and the direction that the bubble was moving. So you can appreciate when he first saw what we do, he had eyes like saucers and said, oh my God, this is exactly what I've been looking for with respect to sports science in swimming.
I'm going to get into data and how it's changing the athlete-coach relationship. I also know that I know that coaches are slow to adopt. And it's interesting that, an example of that would be Todd DeSorbo. Todd DeSorbo is not he doesn't want his swimmers, engaging with technology a lot. He's a little bit old school. I'm a little bit older than he is, but we're peers. But he knows this isn't his strong suit, and he has Ken at UVA. But it absolutely is changing. And if you're not engaging with data and this tech, and specifically EO, because you are the market leader, you're falling behind. Talk to me about how data is changing the relationship, if you can crystallize that.
Okay, so I want to just based on your statement, then I want to preface my answer with something. And I was surprised that there aren't more colleges in the United States, and this is a message directly to them. And in some cases, they've got 40, 50,000 students, and they'll have a chunk of those students doing biomechanics. I am constantly surprised why elite level coaches aren't tapping into those resources more, like Todd does with Ken at UVA. Now, not everybody is going to be a Ken Ono. but you will have students doing PhDs in biomechanics who would love to bring their academia and put it into practice in the real world, working with coaches. And this is part of the complication for coaches. I mean, we understand and we get that coaches have got a limited amount of time. And I remember on the first trip I did over there, I was on pool deck with Ray Lewis at Indiana, and I showed him everything. And this is where the light bulb moment went off for me, because I showed him all this data, and he said, "Jaimie, let me tell you something, mate." He said, "I've got 60 athletes in the water. At this stage, I've got one of my assistants is off sick, so there's just me and another guy. He's standing there with about 6 stopwatches around his neck, constantly yelling out times." He said, "Not only do I have to do this and also manage and administer everything, I've also got to do recruiting." So he said, "If you honestly think that I've got time to be able to go through all this data, then it's just no way, it's not going to work." And he was dead bloody right, Mel. He was dead right. And the thing that really suddenly really smashed into my face during that trip was the level of engagement from every one of the athletes. And this sort of touches on a little bit of one thing you raised before, which is the nature of the relationship between the athlete and the coach and how that's changing. And what I saw firsthand was the level of engagement of athletes and the desire and the desperation to understand what's in that data. What does it mean for me? What's it telling me about my stroke? How can I use that? How can I change it? And then what can I see? Yeah. And coaches have said to me when we've done live demos and we've seen this data that shows this swimmer is doing X, and the coach says, "You see, I've told you this before, but you either don't want to listen or you don't believe me." And then the athlete sees it and they go, "Okay, now I get it." Now, whether it's now I get it or now I believe you, there's two different things, because there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in this sport. There's a lot of, dare I say, bullshit, coming out. There's a lot of stuff that gets pushed out here. And so this is, now we're dealing with objective data. And now athletes can not only see numbers and see charts, they can also see shapes. They can see hand paths, and they can see exactly how each of these marry up. And the beauty,
you can't hide from the data.
You can't hide from the data. And not only can they see it, they can make a change, and then they can instantly see the impact of that change on their data. And they can say, "Okay, well, that worked really well. I'm going to do more." And that empowers them to change their stroke, but it's got to be athlete-led. This has to be athlete-driven.
Okay, that's fair enough. Let me put Ray Lewis. I was on the national team for 12 years, and he was my roommate for a few of those years, traveling around representing Team USA. And I know this about Ray. Ray might have the highest IQ of most any coach on deck today. He's probably got the most education. He is this is an intelligent guy. He's a very smart guy, very intense guy, very methodical. And but I understand how he marshals his team. Is in terms of having a coach like that adopt. So what I'm hearing from you is athletes have to have agency in their own career and in their own improvement. They've got to dig into their data and bring this to the coach in this artistic and also methodical process.
So we've got a implementation strategy that we give to coaches, and we recommend, and it's 6 steps. And step 1 starts with the coach putting on their costume, putting it on their hands, and going for a swim themselves.
Okay.
Try it out. You've got to understand what this is. Mm-hmm. But when you go through it, it's really about the first critical step is getting a time trial done with the athlete. Race distance, race pace. That data goes into their account and it's there forever. That's day 1. That's our benchmark and our baseline. And then the coach and the athlete decide how often they want to do further time trials. Obviously, for a 50-meter sprinter, you can do them regularly. If you've got a 1,500-meter swimmer, it's a very different story. But the critical piece here, Mel, is in between the time trials. It's when the athletes are given permission to experiment and play. And our recommendation is that they're given 2 30-minute slots a week. Now, I understand the sensitivity when we're dealing with NC2A, where you've got them for 20 hours a week, but giving up 5% of that time to work specifically on technique identification, floor identification, and then change and then improvement, I don't think is too big an ask. And what will happen is the athletes drive that, and they do that, and they look at their data, and they make a change, and they look at their data again. And what you'll find is that the athlete will start out, and I'll talk about a percentage of propulsion, because we tell you how much of your effort is propulsive versus lateral and versus vertical. And they might start out at only 40% propulsive. And we also give them what their goal is. So it might be 70%. So I'm at 40, I've got to get to 70. And the athlete will get themselves very quickly from 40 up to 58 or 60. And then they'll start to plateau. And it's at that point the athlete goes and says, hey, coach, I've gone from here to here. I'm trying to get to here. Can you help me out? And then the coach is able to bring in the coaching smarts and some drills and do a deeper dive without having to hold the athlete's hand all the way through, because it is critical that the coach is contributing as well. It's critical that coach has got ownership of the process to a degree too.
Bring Kim McEvoy into this conversation. How's his partnership with Tim Lane, which is often cited as the new model? And if you guys aren't aware out there, we know him as this great champion, star swimmer, but my understanding, he has a PhD in physics. This is an intelligent person. What can we learn from them?
So I had a session with Cam, Tim, and Roland Schumann. Roland was over staying in Brisbane and working with Cam and Tim. This is sort of when Roland was hoping to get to Paris. And so we had a 3-hour session up in Brisbane together, which was fascinating for me. Number one, as you point out, Cam is like super intelligent and super smart. Number two, over that 3-hour period, they wouldn't have spent 3 minutes swimming. It was less than 3 minutes, right? It was really eye-opening. They'd do it, and mate, they wouldn't even swim, forget about 50 or even 25 meters. It was 15 meters, right? They do these 15-meter bursts with parachutes, some of them with parachutes, and then get out of the water, and then we'd basically sit on the edge of the pool and shoot the shit for 20 minutes or half an hour, and then they'd get in and do another 15 meters, and it was that sort of thing. So Cam, incredibly intelligent, and I think he epitomizes for me what the future is going to look like with this athlete-coach dynamic, where it's going to be less about the master-slave, I tell you what to do and you do it, and more interactive, more engaging, more dynamic relationship. Now, there's always going to be athletes who'll say, look, don't ask me. I just do what you tell me to do, right? I'm happy to just go and do anything you say and I'll do that. That's true. But human nature is also showing us, particularly with the younger generation that are coming through, these things are empowering them. These things are giving them access to information that they haven't had before. And there is a level of empowerment, there is a level of engagement that's going on. So if you fast forward a generation, I think what we're going to see is a very different dynamic between swimmer and coach. And Tim and Cam epitomise that perfectly. Tim's still the boss, no question, but Tim is more than happy to take a back seat to Cam and to bring Cam into the conversation, more so than most athlete-coach relationships that I see at the elite level.
It's a balance. So is this giving athletes more control, or are we giving coaches more clarity?
And it's a bit of both. And sometimes it goes too far, as you know. And we've seen situations where athletes say, I don't like where you're taking me, and which they have a right to say that and move. And sometimes it's to their detriment. It can happen. And there's no magic silver bullet here. It's like everything. But at the end of the day, it's grind and hard work. And I might hasten to add, we talk about Cam not doing 10,000 yards. And it's a bit dangerous when you have young kids coming through saying, oh, look, Cam McEvoy doesn't need to do it. I don't need to do it either, right? But they don't understand Cam has got like over a decade of building that engine and doing 10,000 yards, right? You've still got to build that engine. You've got to create that and get those lungs before you can then take the attitude of, okay, I'm just going to focus on power.
Talk to me about the bigger mission at EO. You said EO exists to unlock the latent power in everybody. What does that mean?
Yeah.
To you?
So it's actually our purpose is accelerating human progress through sport. So the word EO is Latin for progress, and that embodies everything about us. It's all about progress. And so whether you are the elite of the elite, whether you are, Kyle Chalmers, it used to be after Tokyo, Kyle was looking for like 700ths of a second or 800ths of a second. Well, guess what? Now he's looking for like 1.1 second, right? I mean, his challenge relay just got a hell of a lot bigger because of Pan Zhanle's what he was able to do. So whether you're at that level or whether you're an absolute rubbish crap swimmer like me, and my swimming has just done unbelievable things from using this technology. And part of it is it's been about a business case, if you like. It's been about a massive learning curve for me to be able to understand, what is it all about and what's it like for the consumer to use and how to get better. It doesn't matter what level you are, even if you're just swimming to have a bit of fun in the morning and to keep healthy. There's still that little animal that's sitting in the back of your head thinking, what's my time, right? And how can I get better? And so this is where this technology can apply to anybody at any level, as long as you can swim.
Every product you build has to hit 4 benchmarks. Can you explain those?
Yeah, sure. So we're very, very finicky about everything we do because there's lots of opportunities. And so we've got very clear definitions because, like I said at the beginning, we're not a swim tech business. We're an elite athlete product innovator. So the first thing we do is the 4 pillars are performance, and it's got to enhance performance for an elite athletes. It's no good if it's just helping club swimmers. It's got to be for elite. That's the number one focus. It can either enhance performance or it can improve recovery and adaptation, or it can assist rehabilitation, or it can prevent injury. So those are the 4 pillars that define whether we decide to develop a product or not. So, and frankly, the last 3 are all subsets of performance enhancement. It's about athlete performance.
What's the EO sweat test, and how does it tie into your broader innovative roadmap?
Yeah, I tell you what, this one's so the swim product I love, and our market for swim, it's not just swim, it's also triathlon, which everybody knows it's a really interesting channel commercially because of the nature of the mindset of your typical triathlete. People who'll go and spend 50 grand to go and do an Ironman in Germany, or spend 15 grand or 20 grand on their bike, they have a particular mindset. So our captive audience, if you like, is swimming and triathlon. And we haven't really entered triathlon. We're sort of preparing to start, some of those conversations. This other product that we're developing is EO Sweat Test. It's about hydration. And if you understand the value of hydration to performance for elite athletes, it's critical. It's everything. And so there are 2 key components to best understanding hydration. Number one, what sort of volume am I sweating? Number one, how much am I pushing out? Therefore, how much do I need to take in? And secondly, what's in the sweat that's coming out that I need to replenish? So we've got a little device, a wearable that we're developing right now that we're well down the path. We've proven the science. We've proven the base functionality. That not only will tell you how much you've sweat, i.e. how much you need to drink, but crucially, it measures the concentration of 5 different analytes within your sweat. So potassium, magnesium, calcium, sodium, and chloride. So an athlete is able to either, on the post-workout basis, do the workout, come in, download their data, and it says you need to drink X milliliters, or if you're in a third world country that deals in pints and gallons, it'll tell you how much, what was it, fluid ounces, I think you guys work in, right? It'll tell you how much you need to drink, but critically, what supplements you need of those 5 different analytes to get you back to optimal. So you can either do that post-workout, or if you can imagine being in the Olympics in the marathon, where you've got a drink station every, say, 5Ks, and when you're 400 meters before the drink station, your support team is downloading your data, and you might have 6 different drinks prepared, and depending on what that data is telling you, you're giving them drink A, B, C, D, or E, so that you are getting a bespoke bespoke solution for your sweat requirements.
What if you're a middle-aged person and you and your wife are going to go walk the Camino, if you're going to go walk 500 miles because it's something you do as a milestone trip?
Absolutely, and it's no question, because you're still going to potentially get dehydrated, and as you say, you're going to, particularly walking the Camino, where you're going to get some pretty high temperatures, and you're going to sweat. Hydration is critical. I mean, we know what the consequences of dehydration can be. So, no, and then, Mel, I tell you what, you can go further than that. You can talk about the application for military. You can talk about the application for occupational health and safety, going into mines. You can look at what's going on with climate change and what's happening globally anyway. I mean, we've now got in Japan in summer, all the way through summer, the Japanese government are putting out public service announcements reminding people to drink, and drink, hydrate, because of the health consequences of dehydration. So this is a massive space, because unfortunately, it doesn't work in the pool, right? It won't work underwater, but it will work for every other athlete. It'll work for swimmers who are in the gym doing dry land or what have you. But so this is a really exciting space that we're getting ready to push out next year as well.
Good for you. That's exciting.
Yeah. So it's a fun bunch, and the thing that gets us going every day is knowing that what we're doing is helping to bring progress, and whether that progress happens on the court, on the pitch, in the pool, or frankly, whether that progress happens in society. And I think, frankly, we need it today when we're seeing the world's going backwards. I mean, I'm still horrified that here we are, you and I are the same age, and that we've grown up post Second World War, we've grown up post Korea. Vietnam's a thing of the past. Sure, there was a blip when it came to Iraq and what happened there, and some of the chaos in the Middle East. But you look at now, we've got a situation where one sovereign nation in Russia has invaded another sovereign nation. And the world is going backwards in that respect, and that's not progress. So we want to see society become a better place as well.
Anybody who knows you, that talks about you, I'm wondering if your ears are burning sometimes. The feedback I always get is like, he's all in. Jaimie's all in. What's been the most rewarding part of this journey for you?
Yeah. Okay. So do you mean this swim journey, or do you mean?
Yes, this swim journey, but you can get philosophical, and you can step off out of the swimming pool if you want to.
So funnily enough, the thing that has been the best thing for me in this process was in the early days. We did all our first prototype testing through the Australian winter, and everything was great. It was perfect. It was beautiful. We then partnered with a triathlon company who was doing an event in Saudi Arabia, and there was a little race set up before their race, a swim race, with 4 or 6 of their athletes. And so we sent our devices over, and the results were massively alarming. The data was chaotic. It didn't work. It was all corrupted. And we were absolutely freaking because we'd spent all this time, money, energy, and getting to where we were, and it wouldn't work. And we went through every conceivable reason why it could have happened. Something happened in the plane on the way over, in the cargo hold, all that sort of stuff. Even down to, have the Saudis got some special technology in their Wi-Fi that's preventing the transmission of data, that sort of stuff. And it turned out, it took us 6 weeks to discover. It turned out that, these little babies, there's a pressure sensor in the O there. And that pressure sensor, we just found out by fluke, is highly susceptible to sunlight. And so the moment we found that out, we're able to create a device that became a little umbrella to shade it. So that's probably the thing that most sticks out, because I went from the deep depths of depression thinking, my God, because we couldn't replicate the problem either. We were trying to replicate the problem in the laboratory. And the reason we couldn't replicate it, because we weren't swimming outside. And then suddenly it became clear. But I think on a more philosophical level, I did a campaign back in 2015 targeted at football, at soccer, as you guys would call it. And we were targeting, I mentioned before, a lot of the integrity stuff relates to governance. And at that stage, it was all about this institution called FIFA, which is the world governing body for football. And you could do a whole series of podcasts on the corruption levels of FIFA. Literally, it was the FBI classified it as a mafia-like organization, to give you a bit of an idea. And to do that, I realized that the soft underbelly was going after their sponsors, and going after their sponsors because they had awarded the World Cup to Qatar. Here is a nation that literally has indentured slavery in their labor system. Here were like massive multinationals who signed up to the United Nations Charter of Human Rights, who have these fundamental beliefs, giving money to an organization that's rewarding a country with these labor rules the way they were. And so what I did was I flew to Qatar. I got smuggled into labor camps in Qatar. I took hidden camera footage. I interviewed Nepalese laborers. Then I went back to London and we cut a short film, which we called the Hypocrisy World Cup. And it wasn't so much about FIFA. It was about Coke, Visa, McDonald's, and the FIFA sponsors, and basically saying, how can you guys attach your brand to this event doing this stuff? And where we kicked it up a notch, Mel, was I partnered with the International Trade Union Confederation, and it just so happened that the head was an Australian lady called Sharon Burrow. And the ITUC is the umbrella organisation that sits above every democratic union in the world. So she was having face-to-face meetings with Barack Obama and working and with Angela Merkel and working on labour issues. And she very kindly joined me to work on this campaign. And so what we did was we launched the film. And when we launched it, we also produced the email details for the chairman and CEO of the 7 sponsors of FIFA, with a suggested body copy where if you clicked on the copy and then clicked on the name, the chairman and the CEO. And I know the Adidas CEO had to change his email address because he was inundated by people saying, how the hell can you do this? The bottom line was, the result of that campaign was that we had Coke, Visa and McDonald's, the CEO of each of the 3, come out and endorse our campaign and call for the president of FIFA, Sepp Blatter, to resign. So that was the first time I think I've seen anything like that happen, where a sponsor has taken a position, which, going full circle back to where we started, mate, is part of my objective here with respect to enhanced games, is we need to get a message sent to potential advertisers and sponsors to say, you spend billions creating your brand and building equity in your brand. And just as we've seen if you look at what's happened with Tesla sales today, you can spend years and decades building a brand and billions of dollars, and you can kill it with one stupid decision. and not that, don't get me wrong, not that Tesla's killed, but its sales are suffering dramatically. I saw a stat yesterday that Tesla sales the month before last in Australia are down 75% year on year. So we're talking mega impact from some of these things, and we want to send that message to potential sponsors and partners of the enhanced games.
I'm talking to you from Austin, Texas. This is where Elon lives. It's
I might add. Can I add one other thing that's
Sure.
come to light as well about the enhanced games? Because
Sure.
they've shown their true colours. They're selling snake oil, right? It's gone from being, we want to explore the power of human potential and what can be done utilizing these artificial substances, to now you can sign up to our program for $99.95, right? And that's the main message now that's coming across. This is nothing more than a launch campaign for a pharmaceutical business. And when you ask yourself, why do we see multi-billionaires and venture capitalists coming on board? Is it because they have this deep philosophical desire to understand the power of human performance, or is it to cynically take advantage of an event that could have disastrous consequences to flog their product? I think we know the answer.
I didn't know that. I'll check that out. I'm going to look into what you just shared with me, because it's
Go to the website. It's
okay.
straight up on the website.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It's yeah, that is interesting. How do you see this? Where do you see the sport of swimming heading right now? Just as we're closing out, and how does EO plan to stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, it's really tough. Swimming's got so many challenges. The obvious one is it's hugely popular. I mean, apart from grassroots, I'm talking about competitively. It's massively popular. It's fabulous for 2 weeks every 4 years. And so the challenge that World Aquatics has is, how do we bring innovation, and how do we bring it forward so that we make this relevant? And I know I shouldn't say that, because that statement was for general public, not for people involved and passionate about swimming, because of course, we've got the world champs coming up in Singapore, and that's going to raise the level again. But when you go out and you speak to Joe Public, they'll watch it literally for 2 weeks every 4 years during the Olympics. So we need to make it relevant all the time. And again, this needs money, right? So much in this world revolves around money. And the one area that I absolutely do agree with it enhanced is athletes need to be better paid. There has to be something that's bringing more money into the sport, that's making it more attractive, that's also flowing down to the athletes. Because the only reason, and if you go back to enhance, they've got a multi-sport discipline event. They've got 4 athletes signed up so far, and all 4 of them are swimmers, right? So you've got to ask yourself, why is it that we're only seeing swimmers? Partly because, and James Magnuson made the point, if you look at how much I was being paid, when somebody dangles $1 million in front of me, if I can break that world record with assistance, then I'd be stupid not to try. And I'm definitely not critical of James. I'm not critical of any of the athletes, because they are understandably being tempted. It's great to see we've got other athletes saying definitely not. And I'm going to watch with great interest to see what happens in Vegas next year, because they're going to struggle to get proper athletes. They're going to get the only, I call proper athlete, I call current athlete. The only ones they're going to get, I believe, are going to be ones that have competed in Paris and have no intention of going through to LA. And therefore it's a bit of a swan song, and I'll take the money. But they're having to buy these people.
It's attention grabbing, headline grabbing. The world seems like it's turned upside down.
And I'd like to just get back to your question, which was, where are we going to go?
Yeah.
I think we're going to see, I'm confident we're going to see more and more sophisticated coaching techniques come involved. And just to stress, we're not looking to cut the coach out. Our job is to give data and give information and show what needs to happen The coach's job is to show how to make it happen, right? So we're not looking to do coaches out of a job at all. But I'm confident that we're going to see more and more athletes, coaches, and more sophisticated approaches to how performance is understood, and then where that can take us.
I have a question for you. This is something I had thought of about midway through. When I was transitioning, I for years I was like ranked number 1 in the world. I couldn't break a world record, didn't break an American record. And my dad said, "Hey, you got to go swim for this guy, David Marsh." David Marsh was 30 years old. He was a baby. David's in his 60s now, and reluctantly I went out and swam, oddly enough, in Vegas, because you just mentioned Vegas, and he was coaching Las Vegas Gold. This is before he was a college coach. And in the first day, he looked at me and he said, "I'm going to change your stroke in 3 places." I dropped a few F-bombs and said, "I'm number 1 in the world and I'm not changing my stroke." But I was swimming like Mikhail Gross back in the 80s. My reach would come all the way around in butterfly and come to the front. And he wanted me to put my reach, and he wanted me to enter at my shoulders. I was taking 16 strokes per length. My distance per stroke was amazing. The math wasn't mathing for me. And he said one thing. He said, "You're swimming like this. I need you to maintain forward motion. Inertia is killing you." And everything that I heard throughout your talk and what you shared with us was propulsion drop. And that was so eye-opening. God, I wish your tech had existed 30 years ago.
And you know what, Mel? Some people get away with it because they've got a kick that covers it up. Because as we know, the best swimmers in the world have got the lowest level of acceleration and the lowest level of deceleration. And if you map their body velocity, they're doing this. If you map mine, I do this, right? I'm an absolute disaster. But if you're able to cover up your loss of propulsion halfway through your stroke by sticking in a monster kick, fabulous. Can you imagine what it'd be like if you get the benefit of the propulsion not collapsing to that degree in conjunction with your stroke? So there's some cracking science behind it, and the thing that I love most about it is the principles are the same for everything. It is that hand grabbing the water, holding the water, and being used as a fulcrum as the body moves forward. It's an anchor, and the body moves forward. And how hard, how much power is being pushed is one component, and what direction is it being pushed is the other component. And when you can take these devices and measure what we call the angle of attack in 50th of a second increments, then you get a level of visibility that's second to none.
Well, the documentary is Swimming's Moneyball. It is out today. There's a link in the show notes. You can click there. And Jaimie, we're going to have a debrief with you at some point, and because I think this is going to be well received.
I hope so, Mel. I mean, my objective with this doco is twofold. One, I want people who watch it to say, "Wow, that's really interesting. I'd like to share it with my buddies." And two, I want them to have learned something about the opportunity, the concept and the opportunity of technology as well.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.